Admiral Ta stood tall on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion his six-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the main view screen. The blue-green world slowly rotated before him, clouds swirling across its surface in delicate patterns. Earth. The name itself was unremarkable. Just like thousands of other planets, the Galactic Empire had added to its ever-expanding territory. "Magnify Sector 4, he ordered, his voice carrying the distinctive musical tone of the Imperial elite. The image shifted, zooming in on a continent surrounded by vast oceans. Sprawling cities dotted the coastlines, connected by primitive transportation networks. Nothing impressive by Imperial standards. Lieutenant June approached with a data tablet, his uniform perfectly pressed as always. Preliminary scans complete. "Admiral, life signs are abundant across all landmasses. The dominant species appears to be bipedal mammals with a relatively short lifespan of less than 100 cycles." Admiral Ta nodded. "Another primitive world ripe for Imperial guidance. Population count. Approximately 8 billion individuals, sir. They've spread across all continents, though population density varies considerably. 8 billion. A decent labor force once properly managed. The Empire always needed more workers for its mining operations and agricultural worlds. Any weapons capability we should be concerned about?" Tai asked, though he already anticipated the answer. Planets at this development stage rarely possessed anything that could threaten an Imperial vessel. Science Officer Minji stepped forward from her monitoring station. "Primitive nuclear arsenals, sir. Destructive on a planetary scale, but nothing that could reach our ships in orbit. Their space technology is rudimentary at best. They've barely ventured beyond their own moon." "Interesting," Ta mused. "Have they achieved unified planetary governance?" Minji shook her head, her facial ridges darkening slightly in what Tai recognized as amusement. "No, Admiral. They remain divided into approximately 200 political entities they call nations. They spend more resources fighting each other than advancing their technology or expanding beyond their world." Admiral Tai allowed himself a small smile. "Perfect. Divided planets were always easier to conquer. The Empire's standard approach: demonstrate overwhelming force against one region, then offer protection to others in exchange for submission. Worked particularly well with species that hadn't unified." "Cultural assessment?" he asked. Cultural Officer Wan consulted his own data screens. "They're quite aggressive for their size, Admiral. Their historical records show continuous warfare throughout their development. However, they've built impressive civilizations despite this tendency. Their art forms are diverse, and they show potential for eventual spacefaring capability if given another few centuries." "We won't be giving them centuries," Ta said. "Prepare the standard first contact protocols. I want a detailed scan of their military installations and major population centers." "Should we remain cloaked, sir?" asked Lieutenant June. Ta considered this for a moment. "No, let them detect us. I want to observe their reaction patterns. It will help us determine the optimal acquisition strategy." "Yes, Admiral," Jun replied, relaying the orders to the cloaking control station. Within moments, the ship's energy signature would become visible to Earth's primitive detection systems. The humans would no doubt panic, as all primitive species did upon first contact with the Empire. Some would prepare for battle, others would attempt communication. Both responses were useful data points. "What resources make this planet valuable, Science Officer?" Tai asked, moving to the resource mapping station. Minji brought up a geological survey on the secondary screen. "Water is abundant, of course, but more importantly, they have significant deposits of rare earth elements that our mining guild has been seeking. Their oceans contain dissolved minerals in quantities that would make extraction profitable. And the biological diversity is remarkable. The medical division will certainly want samples." Admiral Ta nodded with satisfaction. "Perfect. Another simple acquisition for the Empire. Prepare the diplomatic corps for initial contact, and have the military division stand by. We'll try the peaceful approach first. Less damage to the infrastructure that way." As the bridge crew carried out their duties with practiced efficiency, Ta gazed once more at the planet below. These humans had no idea how their world was about to change. The Empire would bring them order, purpose, and protection. In exchange for their resources and labor, of course. It was the way of the galaxy, the natural order of things. "Sir," called Communications Officer Siuk, "we're detecting increased communications activity from the planet. They've spotted us." "Good," said Ta. "Let's see what these humans are made of." Little did Admiral Ta know that the Empire's vast database had made a critical error in its assessment of humanity. The tiny blue planet hanging in space before him wasn't just another world to be added to the Imperial registry. It was about to become the Empire's greatest mistake. Dr. Hyun paced nervously outside the grand strategy room aboard the Imperial command ship. His 3 hearts beat rapidly as he clutched his data tablet against his chest. After 6 cycles as the Empire's leading xenoanthropologist, he had reviewed thousands of species across the galaxy, but none had disturbed him like these humans. The doors finally slid open with a soft hiss. An aide gestured for him to enter. Inside, 12 high-ranking Imperial officers sat around a crescent-shaped table. General Da, Supreme Commander of the Expansion Forces, occupied the center position. His gray skin and elaborate rank markings gleamed under the room's soft lighting. "Dr. Hyun," General Da acknowledged with a curt nod. "We've reviewed your preliminary report on the Earth species. I must say, your concerns seem excessive." Dr. Hyun stepped forward, his thin fingers tapping his tablet to project images into the center of the room. Images of human warfare throughout history appeared. Soldiers in trenches, nuclear explosions, burning cities. "With respect, General, you don't understand what we're dealing with," insisted Dr. Hyun, clutching his data tablet tighter. "These humans don't just fight. They'd eradicate." General Da laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "Every species has conflict, Doctor. What makes these creatures special? They're physically weak, technologically primitive, and politically divided. The standard assessment grades them as a Class II acquisition at most." Dr. Hyun shook his head and projected new images: mass graves, decimated cities, monuments to fallen soldiers. "Their history shows a pattern unlike any species we've encountered. World wars involving their entire planet. Genocide. The systematic elimination of entire populations. Total warfare doctrine, where civilian targets are considered valid military objectives." Dr. Hyun swiped to the next set of data. They'd nearly destroyed themselves multiple times with weapons they barely understood how to control. Commander Suk, head of the Pacification Division, leaned forward. Her facial tentacles twitched with amusement. "All the easier for us then. If they're so intent on destroying each other, they'll welcome Imperial peace." "No, you misunderstand," Dr. Hyun insisted. "When threatened, they unite. And when they unite, they don't fight to establish dominance or territorial boundaries like most species. They fight to completely eliminate threats." He brought up new data charts. "Look at their entertainment media. Most species create stories about heroic compromise and peaceful resolution. Humans, their most popular stories involve total victory through overwhelming force. Their heroes don't negotiate. They terminate." Admiral Park, an older officer with battle scars across his left eye ridge, seemed less dismissive. "What about their resource wars? Most species fight over necessities." "That's just it," Dr. Hyun said eagerly, glad someone was listening. "They fight wars over ideas, invisible concepts like freedom, religion, economic systems. They'll sacrifice millions of their own kind for beliefs. No rational species does this." General Da waved a dismissive hand. "Primitive superstition. They'll abandon such notions when faced with our technology. They've developed over 2,000 religions in their short history," Dr. Hyun countered. "Many centered around apocalyptic end times. Death doesn't frighten them. Some even welcome it if it comes with purpose. Military strategist Jun, the youngest officer present, spoke up. Their weapons are no match for ours. Nuclear devices can't penetrate our shields. It's not about their current weapons, Dr. Hyun said. It's their capacity to adapt and their willingness to accept casualties. Most species surrender when defeat is inevitable. Humans often fight harder. Commander Suk tapped her fingers impatiently. One pacification fleet should suffice. Standard protocols have worked on far more advanced worlds. Dr. Hyun pulled up his final data set, human military doctrine documents. They've developed concepts like mutually assured destruction, the idea that if they die, they'll ensure their enemies die too. No other species we've encountered has institutionalized such thinking. General Day stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Thank you for your thorough analysis, Doctor. We'll take it under advisement. The Imperial Council has already approved the acquisition plan. Captain Baz's pacification fleet departs tomorrow. At least send a full battle group, Dr. Hyun pleaded. Or better yet, observe them longer before making contact. Resources are allocated based on threat assessment, Doctor. We can't deploy capital ships because one xenanthropologist has an unusual fascination with a primitive species, General Day said firmly. The officers filed out, some nodding politely to Dr. Hyun, others ignoring him completely. Dr. Hyun stood alone in the room, staring at the holographic image of Earth still rotating slowly in the air. He shook his head sadly. They've never encountered humans before, he whispered to the empty room. And they have no idea what's coming. As he collected his data and left, Dr. Hyun wondered if he should request reassignment to a distant research outpost, somewhere very, very far from Earth. Officer Jin's hands shook as he approached the center of the Imperial Council chamber. The vast, circular room with its soaring ceiling had always filled him with awe, but today it filled him with dread. 12 council members sat on elevated platforms, their expressions stern as they awaited his report. Jin swallowed hard. He had rehearsed the words during the entire journey from the communication center, but they still caught in his throat. Your Excellencies, he began, bowing deeply. I bring urgent news from the Earth pacification mission. High Commander Kwan, the eldest member of the council, leaned forward. His gray skin had darkened with age, and his eyes held the wisdom of 300 years of Imperial service. Proceed, Officer Jin, Kwan said. Jin straightened his posture and tried to keep his voice steady. We've lost contact with the entire pacification fleet, he reported, his voice trembling despite his best efforts. All 17 vessels. Complete communication blackout for the past 26 hours. The Imperial Council chamber fell silent. The normal background sounds, the soft hum of environmental systems, the gentle chime of incoming data, seemed to fade away. Impossible, whispered High Commander Kwan. That was a Class 3 battle group. Captain Ba is one of our most experienced commanders. Fleet Admiral Mind tapped rapidly on her console. Could it be a communication system failure? Perhaps the humans are using some primitive jamming technology. Jin shook his head. We sent probes to investigate. The images they returned showed. He paused, finding it difficult to continue. To Briz, Excellencies, wreckage consistent with our vessels, spread across Earth's orbit. Councillor Yun, representative from the Science Division, stood up abruptly. Are you suggesting primitive humans destroyed 17 Imperial vessels? With what technology? The humans didn't negotiate as expected. Jin continued, bringing up holographic images captured by the probes. When Captain Bai deployed the standard first contact protocols, the humans responded by launching what appeared to be primitive nuclear missiles. Our reports show Captain Ba easily neutralized these weapons and proceeded with a demonstration of Imperial power, as per protocol. And then, prompted Kwan. Jin brought up more images. The humans launched a second wave of what our sensors identified as the same primitive missiles. But they weren't the same. He enlarged one image. They had modified them. The second wave contained devices that created localized disruptions in our shield harmonics. Murmurs spread through the council. "They adapted that quickly?" asked Fleet Admiral Min. "Yes, Admiral," Jin replied. After the shields were compromised, they launched kinetic weapons, simple but effective when shields are down. They targeted engine systems and communication arrays first. Methodical. Precise. "This is concerning, but surely not enough to destroy an entire battle group," said Counselor Tai from Military Affairs. Jin looked down at his tablet. The humans, they had prepared other weapons as well. Small craft with pilots he struggled to find the right words, who deliberately crashed their vehicles into our ships once the shields were down. "Suicide attacks," gasped Counselor Yun. "No rational species sacrifices its own like that." "There's more," Jin said quietly. "Based on the probe data, it appears the humans salvaged parts from the damaged Imperial vessels. They've already reverse-engineered portions of our shield technology from the wreckage." "It's been only 17 days, gasped Counselor Yun. "No species learns that quickly. It's simply not possible." Jin brought up his final set of images. Human spacecraft approaching the floating debris, collecting pieces, taking them back to their planet. Our intelligence now indicates they're studying everything they can recover. They're focusing particularly on our propulsion systems and weapons technology. High Commander Quan stood slowly, his ancient frame rising to its full height. "We must convene an emergency session of the full Imperial government. This is no longer a standard acquisition mission." "Should we send a proper military force?" asked Fleet Admiral Min. "A full battle group cold?" "No," interrupted a voice from the chamber entrance. All heads turned to see Dr. Hyun, the xenoanthropologist who had warned them about the humans. He walked forward, uninvited. "A larger attack will only convince them that they're fighting for survival. You'll unify them further." "You dare enter without permission," hissed Counselor Tai. "I tried proper channels," Dr. Hyun said firmly. "You ignored my warnings, and now good Imperial citizens are dead." High Commander Quan studied the scientist for a long moment. "What do you suggest, Doctor?" "Withdraw. Completely. Classify Earth as a prohibited zone. The humans believe they've defended themselves against an alien invasion. If we leave them alone, they may return to fighting among themselves." "Retreat. The Empire does not retreat," Fleet Admiral Min said sharply. Dr. Hyun locked eyes with her. "The Empire has never encountered humans before." Officer Jin watched as the council members exchanged troubled glances. For the first time in his career, he saw something he never expected to see in the Empire's highest chamber. Fear. Colonel Han watched the tactical display in horror as another Imperial outpost went dark. The holographic map of the Proxima system flickered as the station's emergency beacon triggered and then fell silent. It was the third outpost this week to disappear from their networks. "How?" he whispered, his scaled fingers gripping the edge of the command table. "How are they doing this?" There was no warning, no distress call. The command center of the Imperial Defense Station Indomitable hummed with tense activity. Officers moved quickly between stations, their usual confident efficiency replaced by nervous energy. The air recyclers struggled to keep up with the increased respiration of the anxious crew. Intelligence Officer Yuna approached with a data tablet, her expression grim. She was young for her position, but her reputation for analytical brilliance had earned her this assignment. Now Han wondered if she regretted her posting to the front lines of this unexpected conflict. "Colonel, I've completed my analysis of the human attack patterns," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Han gestured to the private briefing alcove. Whatever she had to report, he didn't want to further alarm the command staff. Once inside, the sound dampeners activated automatically. "Tell me something useful, Yuna. The High Command is demanding answers, and I have none to give." Yuna placed her tablet on the table, bringing up images captured from security feeds before the outposts went offline. "They call it guerrilla warfare," explained Intelligence Officer Yuna, pointing to footage of small, unmarked human vessels approaching the outposts. They don't follow any conventional rules of engagement. They use small teams, minimal equipment, and complete disregard for what we would consider military honor. Han watched the footage with growing unease. The human ships displayed no identifying markings, didn't announce their approach, and didn't issue demands or ultimatums before attacking. How are they overwhelming our defenses with such small forces? Han asked. They're not trying to overpower us, Yuna replied, swiping to new images. They're identifying critical weaknesses and exploiting them with precision. Look here. The footage showed a small team of humans in environmental suits attaching devices to specific junction points on the exterior of an Imperial outpost. They're studying our architecture, our systems, Yuna continued. They target supply lines, communication hubs, and civilian infrastructure simultaneously. They don't try to capture our outposts or engage our forces directly. They simply want to shut us down completely. Han frowned, studying the tactical data. No species fights like this. Even the Zentari Collective announces their intentions before battle. It's like these humans have no concept of honor in warfare. Because it's not fighting, Yuna said softly. It's annihilation. They've determined we're a threat, and they're systematically eliminating that threat with maximum efficiency. Han shook his head in disbelief. But we pulled back our forces after the initial contact disaster. We haven't launched any further attacks on their planet. The Imperial Council even sent diplomatic transmissions explaining the misunderstanding. Yuna pulled up another file, intercepted human communications. They don't believe us. Their history is filled with deception and warfare. They assume our diplomatic overtures are simply tricks to buy time for reinforcements. That's irrational, Han insisted. We have the technological advantage. If we wanted to destroy them, we could do so from a distance. That's what makes them so dangerous, Yuna replied. They don't think like us. Their entire military history is based on asymmetric conflicts, smaller forces defeating larger, more advanced opponents through unconventional means. A communication alert chimed. Han activated the screen to see Admiral Kwan's face appear. Colonel Han, report your status, the Admiral demanded. 3 outposts lost in the Proxima system, Admiral. The humans are using small strike teams too. It's not just Proxima, interrupted Kwan. We've lost contact with outposts in 7 systems, and we've just received intelligence that human forces have captured the research station in the Ta CD system. Han felt his blood run cold. Captured, not destroyed. Correct. They specifically targeted our weapons research facility. They killed the security forces but took the scientists alive. They want our technology, Yuna whispered. Admiral Kwan's expression was grave. The Imperial Council is convening an emergency session. This is no longer a border skirmish, Colonel. Prepare your forces for full military engagement. After the Admiral's image disappeared, Han turned to Yuna. How did they spread so far so quickly? They didn't have FTL capabilities 3 months ago. Yuna's expression was grim. They'd been adapting our technology, Colonel. Each Imperial vessel or outpost they capture accelerates their development. They're learning exponentially. Han turned back to the tactical display, watching as another Imperial outpost signal began to flicker. What do they want? He asked quietly. Based on intercepted communications, Yuna replied, they want us gone, not just from their system, from anywhere they might ever encounter us again. As the outpost's signal finally went dark, Han realized with growing dread that the Empire had never faced an enemy like humanity before. The humans are coming. Those 4 words, first whispered in the outer colonies, then transmitted across official channels, then shouted in panic on crowded streets, spread through 17 star systems like a virus. What had begun as a simple conquest had transformed into the Empire's worst nightmare. On Valos Prime, the central trading hub of the Empire's western territories, the spaceport had descended into chaos. Thousands of citizens, merchants, workers, and nobles alike, crowded the docking bays, fighting for space on any vessel leaving the system. Children cried as they were lifted above the crowd by desperate parents. Security forces struggled to maintain even basic order. Governor Ta stood on the elevated platform overlooking the main terminal, watching in disbelief as the proud citizens of the Empire trampled each other in their rush to escape. "This is unprecedented," said his aide, Min, checking the latest reports on her tablet. "Refugee ships have clogged every jump gate in the sector. The orbital traffic control can't keep up." Ta shook his head slowly. 10,000 years of Imperial history, and we've never seen a mass exodus like this. A security alert chimed from Min's tablet. She checked it, her eyes widening. "Sir, we need to leave. Now. The palace has sent your personal transport to the executive dock." "What is it?" Tai asked, though he already knew the answer. "Long-range sensors have detected unidentified vessels entering the system. Their energy signatures match the reports from the human attacks." In the Imperial Palace on the homeworld, the Emergency Council had convened in the secure underground chamber. Emperor Wook sat on the ancient throne, his face a mask of controlled anger as he listened to the reports. "They've developed their own FTL drives," reported Captain Sung, her voice steady despite the gravity of her news. The holographic display behind her showed the spread of human incursions into Imperial space, red markers expanding outward from Earth like a bloodstain. "How?" demanded Emperor Wook, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's lights. "They were a pre-FTL civilization just 6 months ago." Captain Sung swallowed hard before answering. "They captured one of our science vessels, Your Imperial Majesty. The ISV Enlightenment. The crew followed protocol and transmitted the self-destruct code. But what?" the Emperor pressed. "The humans disabled it. They don't destroy knowledge, they absorb it." She brought up images captured by Imperial spy drones. "They've been systematically taking our technology, improving it, and deploying it against us." Admiral Park stepped forward, his decorated uniform bearing the marks of many successful campaigns. "Your Majesty, we must deploy the Grand Fleet, all of it. These humans have violated too many systems already." "The Grand Fleet is already mobilizing," replied the Emperor. "But I'm concerned by these reports. How are they moving so quickly? Even with stolen FTL technology, they shouldn't be able to coordinate attacks across such distances." Dr. Hyun, the xenoanthropologist who had first warned about the humans, spoke from his place at the far end of the table. "They're adaptable, Your Majesty, more so than any species we've encountered. And they're fighting with a unity of purpose we didn't anticipate." Security Chief 1, her face bearing fresh scars from a recent escape from human forces, nodded in agreement. "The captives we've interrogated all say the same thing. The humans believe we plan to enslave their world. They're not fighting for territory or resources. They're fighting because they think it's a war for their survival." "But we sent transmissions explaining the misunderstanding," protested Grand Minister Seok. "We even offered reparations for the initial conflict." "They don't trust our words," Dr. Hyun explained. "Their history is filled with false peace offers and deceptive negotiations. They judge by actions, not declarations." The chamber doors burst open as a royal messenger rushed in, breaking all protocol. Guards moved to intercept him, but the Emperor raised his hand to let the man speak. "Your Imperial Majesty," gasped the messenger, "the humans have taken Proxima Colony. The defense fleet was destroyed. They're broadcasting a message on all Imperial frequencies." "Show us," ordered the Emperor. The holographic display shifted to show a human face, severe, determined, with none of the fear or awe that most species showed when addressing the Empire. "This message is for your Emperor," the human said, his voice translated by Imperial systems. "We gave you a chance to leave us alone. You chose to continue your aggression. We have now learned enough about your empire to understand you only respect strength. So be it. We will demonstrate strength. You have 48 hours to withdraw all forces from the systems bordering Earth. After that, We will consider any Imperial military presence an act of war requiring total response." The message ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Admiral Park was the first to recover. "This is outrageous. They've attacked our territories, stolen our technology, and now they demand our withdrawal. We should unleash the planet killers and end this now." Emperor Wook raised his hand for silence, and risked them capturing that technology too. "No." He turned to Dr. Hyun. "You've studied them. What happens if we launch a full-scale assault on Earth?" Dr. Hyun's expression was grim. "They'll fight to the last human, Your Majesty, and they'll ensure that whatever happens to them happens to us as well. They call it mutually assured destruction. It's a cornerstone of their strategic thinking." The Emperor sat back on his throne, feeling the weight of 10,000 years of Imperial history on his shoulders. For the first time, that history offered no guidance. "The humans are coming," he repeated softly, "and we don't know how to stop them." General Bai had never seen an Imperial fleet retreat in disarray, but the tactical screen didn't lie. The proud ships of the 7th Battle Group, once perfectly aligned in standard formation, now scattered across the Rigel system like leaves in a storm. Emergency beacons flashed from damaged vessels as they limped toward the jump gate. She gripped the edge of the command console, her knuckles turning pale against her gray skin. In 300 years of military service, she had led the Empire to victory in 17 major campaigns. She had pacified the rebellious Centauri worlds and crushed the Arcturus uprising. But this was different. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before her. Strategist Ja, her most trusted advisor, worked frantically at his console. His usual calm demeanor had cracked, revealing the fear beneath. "We've lost 38% of our combat vessels, General. The rest are reporting varying degrees of damage." "And the moon base?" she asked, referring to the Empire's primary forward operating station in the system. Jay's hands paused over his controls. "Lost, ma'am. Completely overrun." "Impossible," Bai whispered. "There were 5,000 Imperial troops stationed there. The defense systems alone should have held for days, even against a superior force." "The human attack wasn't superior in numbers," Jay replied, bringing up the surveillance footage recovered from the base's final transmissions. "They deployed some kind of special forces, small units, moving with precision we've never encountered before." The tactical screen showed armored human soldiers moving through the base corridors with frightening efficiency. They didn't waste ammunition. They didn't hesitate. Every movement seemed rehearsed. Perfect. "What are these special forces they deployed?" she demanded, studying their movements with professional interest, despite her anger at the defeat. "They call them Marines," replied strategist Ja, pulling up intercepted human communications. "It's an ancient warrior tradition, dating back to when they fought on water. They're specifically trained for boarding actions and base assaults. According to our intelligence, they secured the entire moon base in under an hour." General Ba stared at the footage in disbelief. The Imperial soldiers were among the best-trained warriors in the galaxy, yet the humans moved through them like they were untrained civilians. "They left no survivors?" she asked, though she already knew the Imperial protocols for captured bases. "No, ma'am." Jay hesitated, then corrected himself. "That is, they left one, with a message." He tapped his console, and a final video appeared. A single Imperial officer kneeled before a human in what appeared to be a command uniform. The human spoke a few words, then left. The timestamp showed this was the last transmission before the base went dark. "What did they say?" Ba demanded. "The surviving officer was put on the last escape pod. He arrived at Recovery Station 9 an hour ago. The message was simple: surrender or face extinction." Bada's eyes narrowed. "They dare to threaten the Empire with extinction. We span 1,000 worlds. They have one." "Had one," Jay corrected quietly. Our latest intelligence suggests they've started establishing colonies on worlds they've taken from us, and they're advancing faster than we can track them. A communication alert sounded. Admiral Lee's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. General Ba, the Emperor has called an emergency war council. Your presence is required immediately. I'll depart as soon as we've secured the retreat, she replied. There's more, Lee continued. The humans have breached the quantum gate network. They're bypassing our defensive lines completely. They felt a chill run through her body. The gate network was the Empire's most closely guarded technology, allowing instantaneous travel between specific points in space. It was what had allowed them to build and maintain an empire across the stars. How? She demanded. The encryption protocols. They didn't break the encryption, Lee interrupted. They reverse-engineered the entire system from captured technology. They're building their own gates, General, and they're deploying them faster than we can track them. After the Admiral's image faded, Bai turned to Jai. Prepare my ship and download all tactical data from this engagement. The Emperor needs to understand what we're facing. As they moved toward the hangar, Jay spoke quietly. General, I studied every species the Empire has encountered. None of them adapt this quickly. None of them fight with this intensity. What are you suggesting, strategist? The xenoanthropologist, Dr. Hyun, was right. These humans don't think like us. They don't fight to establish dominance or to capture territory. When they feel threatened, they fight to eliminate the threat entirely. General Bai stopped walking, turning to face her strategist. Are you suggesting we consider their surrender terms? I'm suggesting we consider all options, General. For the first time in Imperial history, we may be facing an enemy we cannot defeat through conventional means. Bai resumed walking, her mind racing through possibilities. The Empire had never surrendered to anyone in its 10,000-year history, but it had never faced humans before. As her ship prepared for departure, she watched the tactical display one last time. The human fleet was not pursuing the retreating Imperial vessels. Instead, they were securing the system methodically, placing what appeared to be defensive installations. They weren't just conquering. They were building something, preparing for what would come next. The reckoning had only just begun. The Imperial Palace on Nexus Prime had stood for 10,000 years. Its soaring crystal towers and vast central dome symbolized the unquestioned dominance of the Galactic Empire. In all those millennia, no foreign delegation had ever been allowed past its golden gates. The palace was sacred ground, reserved only for those born under Imperial stars. Today, that tradition ended. Emperor Wook sat rigidly on the eternal throne, his ceremonial armor gleaming in the light that streamed through the dome above. Around him, the Imperial Council stood in silent rows, their expressions a mixture of shock, anger, and fear. The chamber, designed to inspire awe in all who entered, seemed somehow diminished today. The massive doors at the far end of the hall swung open. Imperial guards, their weapons conspicuously absent, led 5 figures into the chamber. Humans. They walked with confidence, showing none of the reverence or intimidation the chamber was designed to evoke. Admiral Lee leaned close to the Emperor's ear. Your Imperial Majesty, I must protest one final time. Having these creatures in the sacred palace is necessary, Emperor Wook interrupted quietly. Unless you prefer to continue a war we cannot win. The humans approached the base of the throne. They wore simple dark uniforms with minimal markings or decorations, a stark contrast to the ornate regalia of the Imperial dignitaries. Welcome to Nexus Prime, Emperor Wook said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. In 10,000 years, no emperor had ever welcomed aliens to the homeworld. The human in the center stepped forward. Emperor Wook. I am Ambassador Kim, representing the United Earth Government and its allies. No bow, no honorifics. The council members stirred restlessly at the breach of protocol, but remained silent. We have reviewed your surrender terms, the Emperor said, forcing himself to use the word that no emperor had ever spoken before. Ambassador Kim nodded. "These terms are generous," he said. "We don't want your worlds or resources. We have no interest in occupying Imperial territory or subjugating your people." A murmur ran through the council. After 6 months of devastating losses, with a third of the Empire's territory under human control or influence, many had expected far harsher demands. Emperor Wook leaned forward slightly. "Then what do you want, Ambassador? You've destroyed our fleets, captured our outposts, and breached defenses no other species has ever penetrated. Yet you claim to want nothing from us." "To be left alone," replied Kim. "That's what we've wanted from the beginning. A buffer zone between our territories, non-aggression pacts, trade agreements if desired, but no obligation. Each side respects the other's sovereignty absolutely. You devastated our military capabilities just to establish borders," asked General Ba, unable to contain herself despite protocol. One of the other humans, a woman with short gray hair and a face marked by recent combat, answered, "We studied your history, General. The Empire has only expanded for 10,000 years. You've conquered every civilization you've encountered. We needed to demonstrate that the cost of attempting to conquer us would be too high. The terms also include technology restrictions," noted Science Minister Jay. "You demand we not develop certain weapons or dry systems, only those that could be used for rapid offensive deployment against Earth or our allies," Kim clarified. "Your existing technologies for domestic use remain unrestricted." "And if we refuse these terms?" asked Emperor Wook, though he already knew the answer. Ambassador Kim's expression remained neutral. "Then we continue what we started. But understand this. So far, we have limited our attacks to military targets and government installations. Break this peace, and we won't stop at your military targets." The implied threat hung in the air like a blade. "Very well," Emperor Wook said after a long moment. "We accept your terms, Ambassador Kim. The treaty will be signed and broadcast across all Imperial worlds, as requested." Kim nodded. "We'll establish the demilitarized zone immediately. Our forces will withdraw from occupied territories once your military installations are decommissioned." After the formal proceedings concluded, the human delegation departed, again without bowing or showing any traditional signs of respect. The council erupted into heated discussions the moment the doors closed. Admiral Lee moved closer to the Emperor, who remained seated on his throne, deep in thought. "This is a dark day for the Empire," Lee whispered. "In 10,000 years, we've never surrendered to anyone. We've conquered 1,000 worlds. How did we not see this coming?" Emperor Wook watched the doors through which the humans had departed. "Because," Wook replied, his voice heavy with realization, "we only knew how to conquer. They know how to end civilizations." In the days that followed, news spread across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Imperial rule for millennia watched in disbelief as the humans established their boundary zones. Some worlds, seeing the Empire's weakness, declared independence. Others reached out to the humans, seeking protection or alliance. On distant planets, beings looked to the stars with new understanding. The natural order of the galaxy had shifted. The eternal empire had met its match in a species from a small blue planet, a species that didn't fight for honor or territory or resources. They fought for survival. And when humans fought for survival, they didn't just win battles. They rewrote the rules of the game entirely.